What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel for another episode of the Ask Me Anything series. I hope you all had a fantastic weekend. The NHL preseason is officially underway, and although there's nothing quite like regular season and playoff hockey, it's nice to have NHL hockey back on our TVs. There's a lot going on right now, a lot of fun things to talk about. You guys asked a ton of great questions this episode, so as always, I want to give a huge thank you to every single one of you who took the time to come up with a question and leave it on the post. Even the questions that don't get featured in the video, just know I read every single one, and I appreciate all of you guys. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get things started with this first question from FlamesFan13. This is a long one. Theoretically, if the Winter Olympics were going on this year and NHL players were able to go, do you think Connor Bedard would make Team Canada even with no NHL experience under his belt? His once-in-a-generation talent and dominance in the World Juniors makes it not 100% out of the picture for him to make the team, plus Slafkovsky made the Slovakia Olympic team and dominated, bringing them to a bronze, which proves it could be a good idea. Thanks for the great content and keep up the great work. Thank you for the support. My answer to this question though would definitely be no. I don't think he would make the team. Maybe he would get a look, but you have to think, like, Canada has to cut NHL All-Stars from the Olympics when NHL players are there. And sure, Slafkovsky made the Slovakian Olympic team in the most recent Winter Olympics. Obviously, he had an amazing performance, but that was in a tournament where NHL players did not participate. If Connor Bedard was from Germany or the Czech Republic or Slovakia or a country like that and the NHL players went to the Olympics, I think he probably would make those teams. For a team like Canada though, I just feel like it would be really hard to justify, cutting an NHL All-Star caliber player or multiple NHL All-Star caliber players and having Bedard on the team without any NHL experience, without even having been drafted yet. This next question we have comes from Nick, who says, should the Rangers keep together the kid line from last playoffs? Obviously Laff, Kakko, and Hedl all seem to find that touch together, but with them growing up, should guys like Laff and Kakko specifically get moved up to the top 6? And thank you for the support. I'm gonna go with no on this one. I don't think that line should be kept together because we know who the Rangers' first and second line centers are going to be. It's going to be Mika Zibanejad and Vincent Trocheck, and I feel like ideally you want Kakko and Lafreniere as mainstays in the top 6 for most of the season, and aside from those two, I don't know who would play in the top 6 over them. We know Kreider and Panarin are going to be there, but then that would still leave 2 open spots if you're playing Kakko and Lafreniere on the third line with Hedl, so who would play in the top 6 over them? Sammy Blais, Vitaly Kravtsov maybe, possibly Barclay Goodrow. I think ideally, again, like I said, you want Lafreniere and Kakko in the top 6 if you truly want them to take that next step this year. Moving along now to the next question. This one comes from the Amazing Gamer 6736, who says, do you think the Oilers could be cup contenders this season? They have definitely improved with Campbell and depth pieces like Virtanen, Janmark, and Holloway most likely making the team out of camp. I feel like it's only right to look at them as contenders. They just made the conference finals, obviously lost to the Colorado Avalanche, but they made the conference finals. They were one of the final 4 teams, and I definitely think it's safe to say they got better over the offseason. They know for a fact who their starting goaltender is going to be heading into the season, and that is Jack Campbell. They're going to have a full season of Evander Kane, who was obviously huge for them down the stretch and in the postseason. The next question we have comes from Jacklinhardt, who says, do you think Igor Shesterkin will regress this season from his historic numbers last season, or will he be able to maintain his numbers into this season? And thank you for the kind words. I feel like it's only natural to expect some regression when it comes to his performance and his numbers this season. Like you said, last year, I mean, he was historic. A .935 save percentage in 53 games is unbelievable. Honestly, I feel like it wouldn't even be fair to Igor Shesterkin to put those kind of expectations on him and to expect him to replicate those numbers again. But I mean, just because he's most likely not going to be able to put up those kind of numbers again, I still fully expect him to be a top 3 goaltender in the league, be in contention for the Vezina Trophy. Even if his save percentage comes down a whole 10 points, it would still be at a .925, which is still elite. Moving on now, the next question we have comes from Jet27J, who says, now that Couturier is out for at least 3 months and Ellis is also out, where do the Flyers finish in the standings now? And also, thank you for the kind words, and I was safe through the hurricane. It was pretty crazy, but me and my family definitely stayed safe. I appreciate every single one of you who, sent kind messages on Twitter and stuff like that. I actually got pretty lucky, only lost power for about 16 hours. I actually know some people who are still without power, which is really unfortunate, so I definitely got lucky there. But to answer your question now, I'm going to be pretty blunt with this, and I can see by your YouTube picture, you're most likely a Flyers fan, so I know you're probably not going to want to hear this, but I really think the Flyers are screwed. I'll be honest, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that felt this way, but even with Ellis and Couturier healthy, I didn't put much faith into the Philadelphia Flyers heading into the season. I didn't give them much of a chance, but now without their best defenseman and without their best forward for a long time, I really think the Flyers are in for a long and rough season. I would put them right there with teams like the Chicago Blackhawks and and the Arizona Coyotes in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes, which honestly may not be a bad thing. Moving on now, next up we have a question from Gibe, who says, if the NHL were to have an expansion team outside of Canada and the US, what country and or city do you think a new team can play in? And I really appreciate the support. This is a really interesting question, something that I've never really thought of before. I feel like it's probably not very possible to expand outside of North America just for travel reasons. Say if they wanted to have an NHL team in Europe or something like that, I feel like you'd have to have a whole division of teams over there that just play each other for a season, and then maybe come playoff time, you can have a North American team play a European team or something like that. Actually, now that I think of it, I mean, they'd never put a team here, but Mexico is only right below the United States. I think a flight from Dallas to Mexico is only like 2.5 hours or something like that, so the travel wouldn't be that outlandish. Imagine going to Mexico to watch an NHL game. That would be pretty sweet. Continuing on now, the next question we have comes from McJesus, who says, after the Nils Lundqvist trade to Dallas, do you think the Stars gave up too much to get him 23 first and a 25 fourth, and do you think he can reach his ceiling with the Stars? I would say it was maybe a little bit of an overpayment, and it was a little risky just because that 2023 Dallas first round pick could end up being pretty valuable if they don't make the playoffs, and I'm not even sure if I'm going to predict Dallas to make the playoffs. I haven't done my standings predictions yet. I haven't really thought about them, but I wouldn't say Dallas is a playoff lock by any means. So for the Rangers, considering they had no leverage in this situation and Nils Lundqvist requested a trade, wasn't going to report to training camp, didn't want to be a part of the Rangers anymore, I think they did pretty well here. That being said, I do see a scenario where this becomes a really nice trade for the Dallas Stars. I'm not low on Nils Lundqvist by any means. I'm still relatively high on him. It wasn't all that long ago that he was viewed as one of the best defensive prospects in the NHL, so I definitely believe the potential for him to develop into a very good top 4 defenseman is still there. This is kind of one of these trades where we're going to have to wait a while to really see who comes out on top. Moving on now, this question comes from Everything Hockey, who says, who ends up winning the Avs 2C role, Rodriguez or Newhook? Curious to hear your thoughts, and thank you for the kind words and the support. I'm going to say it's most likely going to be Alex Newhook. I'm really high on him. I think he's going to have a big breakthrough season, although I could also see a scenario where with Landeskog out, they play Alex Newhook on the wing on that second line and maybe have JT Compher as the centerman. I could see that happening. The Avalanche have a pretty versatile lineup, a lot of guys that can play different positions, so even though they don't have a true number 2 center with Nazem Kadri leaving in free agency, I think they're going to be just fine, and they're going to kind of make up that loss by committee. From Ben Murphy, who would you say is the premier contender in the Chychrun sweepstakes? I actually made a video on this not too long ago, so if you haven't seen that, I'll spoil it right now. The number 1 team that I said I think is in the best position to make a trade like this happen, and I think would make a lot of sense, is the Los Angeles Kings. They're one of the better young teams in the league. I think you can still call them an up-and-coming team, even though they made the playoffs last season and pushed Edmonton to 7 games in the first round. So Chychrun would definitely fit that timeline. He's only 24 years old, obviously is on a very, very team-friendly contract, and the LA Kings have the kind of assets as to where they can make a trade like this happen. They can put together a package that would be appealing for the Arizona Coyotes. They have a very deep prospect pool, they have all their draft picks, and of course those are the 2 things that I'm sure the Coyotes would be looking for in a Chychrun trade. You know, first round pick, second round pick, you know, high level prospect, maybe a decent young player, something along the lines of that. So I would definitely say the Kings are the premier contenders in the Chychrun sweepstakes. Next up, this question comes from Senator Sal, who says, so my question is, what will Dylan Larkin's new contract look like? He's currently making $6.1 million and entering the final year of his deal. I won't lie, as a Red Wings fan, I am getting a little bit worried with the whole Larkin situation. I kind of figured a contract extension would be done by now. You know, the regular season is almost here. We're 11 days away from the games over in the Czech Republic, which kick off the regular season, and most NHL players, they don't like to negotiate contracts throughout the season. They usually stop doing it and then they'll pick it back up in the off season, and then obviously, you know, you're getting real close to unrestricted free agency at that point. I still do have faith that it's going to get done eventually, and my prediction for that deal, if and when it gets done with Detroit, obviously I think it's going to be 8 years. That just makes sense. And as far as the AAV goes, I don't think it's going to be cheap by any means. I would say anywhere between 8 and 9 mil would be my prediction for the AAV. Next up, we have more contract talk here. This one comes from Hayden, who says, what are your thoughts on the new McKinnon extension? Do you think it's too much, or is it a good contract? When this extension initially broke, I seen a lot of people saying it's way too much and McKinnon shouldn't be the highest paid player in the league, and everyone went back to McKinnon saying he's probably going to take a team-friendly deal again. Well, I have a newsflash for you. This actually is a team-friendly deal for the Avalanche. If Nathan McKinnon didn't sign this extension and he tested unrestricted free agency, I guarantee you he would be getting offers from teams with an AAV, you know, upwards of 14 mil a season, especially with the salary cap projected to go up, you know, so much over the next, 5 to 7 years. I feel like McKinnon definitely deserves this contract, considering how underpaid he was compared to the other top players in the league for so much of his career, and if you think this is a lot, just wait till Matthews and McDavid get their extensions. And now finishing off today's episode with a question from Raleigh Lindgren. Hopefully I said your name properly, I apologize if not. How many goals will Laine get playing with Johnny Hockey, or would you play them on different lines? I would definitely play them on the same line just because I feel like their games and their skill sets would complement each other so well. Johnny Gaudreau, one of the absolute best playmakers in the NHL, and we all know Patrik Laine has an unbelievable shot, is such a good goal scorer. I think with Johnny Gaudreau as his setup man for the entire year, if these guys stay healthy and stay in a line together, would not be surprised whatsoever to see Patrik Laine get back to 40 goals. So I would say probably between 35 and 40 goals is somewhere where he'll finish this season. So that is going to wrap up today's episode of the Ask Me Anything series. Like I said at the beginning, thank you so much to every single one of you who took the time to come up with a question and leave it on the post. I appreciate all of you guys. You make this series so much fun for me to do. If you guys are as excited as I am for the regular season, which again gets underway in like 11 days or something like that, then be sure to leave this video a like. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content like this all through the season, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.